My brother Pete and I are going to bring you the Rebels Edge and a stock that we talked about yesterday that the options moved 20x today. Bang! Bang, bang.
It's the Rebels, baby. What a November, John, huh?
Yeah, last day of November, episode 287 of the Rebels Edge. We welcome all of you joining us. I'm Jon Najarian. He is Pete Najarian. And as usual, Jared is going to be handling all the duties of the clocks, the weird sounds, the dancing bulls or bears. And today, the bears are being stabbed. It wouldn't be bears dancing today. It would be the bulls having their way with those bears, because on the PCE numbers, we loaded like a spring to the upside. Well, let's dive in, shall we, Pete?
Let's do it.
Macro minute, Fed futures. The Fed wasn't responsible, but people reading into what the Fed may do, and that is stay on the sidelines like we've been saying. They're in their favorite inflation gauge. That was one of the things that really got the market lit, Pete.
Yeah, absolutely it did, John. And now people are talking about, okay, what is the Fed going to do next, right? I mean, we've heard from Fed governors. They never stop speaking. But, you know, it sounded a little bit to the point of, we're not really done yet. Now, all of a sudden, with some of these numbers, people are saying, well, when are we going to start cutting? And so I think that, to your point, this PCE, these numbers were interesting and basically in line. So I think that the Fed right now is feeling probably more comfortable than they maybe were a few weeks ago even. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But certainly that is the macro side of things for today.
Yeah. And right after macro, folks, you know it. You love it. We do fantastic futures.
Fantastic futures.
And those fantastic futures, I don't know which one Pete's going to pick because we don't discuss these ahead of time, folks, but OPEC Plus, that meeting is today, of course. It got delayed by a couple of days and crude sold off because of it. But now we've also got deeper cuts coming is what they said. They said, you know what? We're going to get pledges for about 1.3 million in cuts. That's going to push prices up, I think. How about you, Pete?
Well, I tend to agree with you, John. You know, the middle of November, we were at 72 for the price of crude. Then we jumped all the way up. We were closer to 78. Then we dipped back down to 75. Then today we hit 79, actually 79.60 was the high of today. But that's long gone, too. Now we've dropped again. This thing is trading like a meme stock, John. I mean, crude oil is literally all over the place right now. It's tough to figure it out. But I will say this. I continue to be bullish on it. And I think that this run has made some sense based upon what we have been seeing and what we've been getting reports from. So I still think we're going to see oil get back over 80 and eventually at some point, maybe significantly higher than that. But certainly I think 80 could be in the crosshairs.
I would say it is. The fact that Russia and Saudi are also voluntarily cutting, Pete, and the rest of OPEC Plus, they said, hey, all you guys, you're cutting 1.3 billion barrels because we said so. And I said billion, I meant million, folks. We don't consume a billion gallons, but we do consume refined over a couple million barrels a day worldwide. All right, Pete, let's talk about that stock that we teased in. That would be Immunogen. This stock was up 80% in the pre-market today, Pete. And as soon as I saw that, I was just, get the stock market open. Because when you look at this thing, it has rocked. And it has rocked because of AbbVie putting in a $31 bid for what, a stock that was a teenager, Pete?
It's really extraordinary, John. And the options were all over this, obviously looking for some sort of an upside move based on what? Nobody was exactly sure, but certainly this number, anytime you start seeing numbers like this, John, this is a stock that was trading significantly lower, as you just pointed out, but now a $10 billion bid. What we're seeing here right now, I think, is AbbVie trying to go the long term. They're going the long term. And what do I mean by that? Well, when you look at the company they're buying, which is essentially cancer treatment, you're looking at a company that has one stock that's actually out there in the world. The rest of them are still in the various phases. And so it's interesting. We've got 8 of them that are all from the very clinical side at the very beginning, all the way to maybe phase 2, and then just 2 that are in phase 3. But they are certainly aggressively coming after this one. They didn't want anybody to outbid them, John. They just said the heck with it, because they could have given a bid of $5 billion. They could have gone 6. These guys went 10. So that's pretty amazing to me. And I'll tell you who's really suffering today. That 12% of folks out there who is shorting it. They are definitely feeling the pain today.
Yeah, as always, folks. And shorts are good for the market, as long as they're real, as long as they're covered, and not uncovered shorts. In other words, illegal, but nobody really is looking around at that. But I think, Pete, overall, the short squeeze is definitely part of it. The fact that the bid's 31 and the stock's well over 29. These things take a few months to close. We all know that. But this was a just fantastic move. By the way, folks, they were one of the first calls that they were buying in there was a 50 center, and the stock trading up to 30 meant that those 20 calls, well, they're worth a good strong $10. So if you paid 50 cents for something that goes to $10, that's where we're getting those fabulous returns. Oh my.
Unreal.
Let's talk about VFS, Pete. That's that Vietnamese EV maker. And this one making a big move to the upside. Now, Pete already spoke about the idea of shorts and how they contribute to these rallies. They have a 28% short. That is one of the biggest short I've seen, Pete, of a major stock. And keep in mind, when this thing came public, it basically was up significantly higher, but they didn't bring any stock to market. It was all the insiders. They didn't do an IPO. Instead, they just listed it. It was an uplist. And oh my gosh, Pete, down 84% from those highs, but making a real strong move this week.
It's having a strong move, but gosh, to your point, John, let's just go through this. 52 weeks. So here's what you got. You've got $4.50 on the low side. You got $93 on the high side. So we are talking about something that's crazy. And on this huge move to the upside today, it's trading close to $9. So it is a nice move. This is something that a lot of people are pretty excited about. Matter of fact, recently, Dan Ives, and you and I both know of Dan Ives, he was out there talking about, hey, you know what? I'm going to start this thing off. I'm going to say this thing should be a buy. He gave it a price target. I think it was 12, and just looking for something to happen fairly, maybe in the near term. Well, he's getting it. He's getting a really nice move today. And certainly when shorts are out there and things like that are going on, you can get those squeezes. Yeah, that's always a good thing. But this is a company where when you do look at the fundamentals, John, they kind of look a little like Rivian, but they're not quite there yet. But it's still a company that could be really, really interesting, including the skateboards. It's not just an EV with cars, John. They've got it everywhere. So it's really interesting what they've been able to piece together. I think this one's going to be interesting. I would far rather be on the long side of this one right now than I would be on the short side. So if I'm one of those shorts, if somebody is out there and they're short, I don't think it's a bad place to cover because you've probably done pretty well up to now.
Yeah, you left some money on the table for sure if you were short, but not as bad as it could be. I mean, they're going to be speaking, Pete. They're honored to present Vietnam and speak at the showcase of VF9 EV at the COP28. This is a big climate summit, and they're going to be presenting. So that's an honor for anybody, and in particular, a company, a $20 billion startup EV company out of Vietnam. All right, let's talk about Pure Storage, Pete. People hear this name and they think, oh, storage, I know what that is. people that have too much furniture, they go and they rent a storage thing, right? No, this is data storage. So PSTG down 16%. They reported better than expected top line, bottom line, Pete, 50 cents versus 41. But the top line was pretty much close to in line, and their guidance was way worse than the street expected. And for that reason, double-digit drop out of the stock.
Yeah, understandably so, John. I mean, they came through. Things looked pretty good. Their balance sheet, by the way, is outstanding, too. So there's a lot of things to really like. But anytime the public hears when the guidance is as bad as this, it's one thing to have some guidance, John, where you're a little bit below what was expected. This is not just a little bit below. I mean, the numbers are, they're saying Q4 will be $782 million. Well, they were looking for 921. So that is significant. That's a big number. That's a very large miss on the guidance, and they're paying for it today for sure. This is a company that has done a lot of things right, but right now with that guidance, and they have some excuses on why that guidance is there, John. They were talking about subscription models, things that they're doing to change things. That all being said, it doesn't matter. The public is not going to have that kind of patience. They're going to turn and burn and say, all right, sold to you for now, and then we're going to wait. So we'll see what exactly happens over the next couple of weeks here. I think this is one where you can be patient and wait.
I think you could, and I think you'd be smart to, Pete, quite frankly. All right, let's talk about your buddy, Mark Benioff. And sometimes we throw that around, folks, but Benioff and Pete are friends. And did you see him in San Francisco on one of your recent trips, Pete? I forget where you got
Not on a recent one, John, but
Jeff Bridges and you, weren't you both there?
Oh, yeah. That's a little while ago. Yeah.
A couple years, but you and Jeff Bridges, the Big Lebowski, and dude Reno. He and Pete were having a good time there, and Benioff, who's a huge man, not just a giant in finance for the great company that he's built, but also a very big guy. He looks like he could have been an O tackle or something, Pete. But anyway, his numbers were fantastic. They came out, Salesforce topped estimates. They issued a very strong forecast going forward. And, when you look at how that, outperformance worked for you, Pete, it was pretty big.
Yeah, they did everything right, John. I mean, they've had some quarters not too long ago, had some quarters that weren't great, but consistency is something they do have. And so every once in a while they may miss, but then they are there. And on this particular case, I think they not only delivered, they also delivered on what they were seeing into the future, the revenue there. That was a much bigger number than the revenue expected on top of things. So there is a lot to this. Bank of America, by the way, they just had to do it. Their analyst came out there and said, wow, this is a great AI play, guys. Everybody wants to put that down there as something in this particular day and age, because all you got to do is say something positive about AI and the company that you're talking about. People tend to want to buy it. They have come off of the highs of the day. But the thing that stands out for me, John, of all the things that are there, they did well on earnings. They did well on revenue. How about the free cash flow of this company? These guys' free cash flow, John, is $12 billion. We don't see those kind of numbers very often. So this is a monster company. They absolutely crushed it when they needed to, and people are falling in love with it. Now, like I say, hit 52-week highs today, then it started to ease back. But this is a stock that it might start shooting up for the 300 level at some point in time, maybe next year.
Yeah, 245 right now. High on the day, let me see, Pete. High on the day was 250, 250. So a new 52-week high. Just a brilliant performance.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you know what we thought a lot of you might enjoy is, and this is courtesy of our friends at Yahoo Sports. This is a bunch of the NFL players and who is the best dressed. We'll let you guys decide. Pete and I will go back and forth with our picks. We're going to start off with Travis Kelce. Yeah. That's
John, it's not always about the fanciest. How about that? A Wonder Bread. I mean, these guys, look at the boots on these guys. Pat Mahomes, this is just phenomenal. I love it.
Well,
we should have that, John, like when we're at a conference or something. We ought to have everybody walk out and see who's got the best guns on.
We should. Well, it's definitely something, folks, where these guys love to strut their stuff. Travis loves to flaunt the idea now that he's bought that $8 million pad outside of Kansas City. And I guess Taylor Swift is moving in, Pete. At least that's what I hear.
There's a lot of people, John, that were
futures.
People were talking about that, John, and everybody thought at first that this relationship, it's just for publicity. These guys aren't really together and stuff. And shoot, sure looks like they maybe are. And I'll tell you what, she makes a heck of a lot of money, a lot more than he makes. But nonetheless, it's not like this guy is some poor guy either. So for the guys out there that are saying, well, he's kind of latching onto her because of the money that she's got, I'm not really sure that's the case. I think there might be in true love, John. It could be.
It could be. Well, they seem to have some chemistry, Pete, so I'm not putting it down. I just don't like it when they're constantly showing his mom or his uncle or whatever, or her up in the booth. And it's like, okay, we get it. But anyway.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I hear you. All right, John.
Rebel Sports Red Zone. Yeah.
Yeah. We're looking at the AFC, right? And the AFC has got some damn good teams this year. Like we already knew going into the year, but I think you might even be surprised how good Miami is. They're 8-3. Baltimore, I think, is the best team right now. They're 8-3. Jacksonville, 8-3, playing really good football. Kansas City, you just mentioned it. We're talking about Kelsey, 8-3, good football. You know who's not playing good football? The Jets. And the Jets are known for having a great defense, right? I mean, that's what they had. They needed one more piece. Aaron Rodgers. He gets hurt in week 1. Quarter 1. I mean, it's just, you couldn't write it up, John, how unfortunate it was for the Jets. Now they're talking about, hey, is the head coach worthy of still being there next year? And all these types of questions are being asked and everything. My question to you is, because I don't think he should, but should Aaron Rodgers come back and play this year? Because he's out there right now. He's out there at practice. He's not full gear and all the rest of it, but he is basically letting us all know, hey, if they wanted me, I could play right now. And I just don't like it, John. Based upon their record, based upon everything in the AFC right now, I just don't think it makes sense. But what do you think? Is that something where would you take a shot if you're the GM, head coach? Do you let Aaron Rodgers on the field?
I have him on the field on the sidelines, not suited up. Now, they opened what they called a 21-day practice window, Pete. And for those of you out there that follow football as closely as Pete does, you'd know that if you go on injured reserve, which he is on, but he was on after he played in the first game. If you go on before that, a lot of people used to hide players by doing that. They'd put a guy on injured reserve, a excess quarterback, for instance. They might put him on injured reserve. Everybody go, when did he get hurt? But anyway, if he went on injured reserve, then they could pull him back off of there during the season if they needed him. Now the rule has changed, so you can't do that. If you go in injured reserve during preseason before the first game, in other words, when the roster counts, there's various levels they have to do, of course, make cuts and everything to get down to their final roster. But once you've made the roster, now you could go on injured reserve. And we all know his injury was real. But they have 21 days now, Pete, to decide if they're going to activate him because he's not active yet. And to your point, would they activate him if they don't have a playoff chance? If they do, Mr. Johnson should fire Saleh because there's no sense to putting him on the field if they don't have a playoff chance. And their chances are pretty effing slim, Pete. Anorexically slim, I'd say.
I would agree with you in that offense, John. They can't score points. I think even if Aaron's able to get out there, they've gotten beat up here and there, offensive linemen, all this kind of stuff. It's just, it hasn't been their year to make that move. And it was so much press and everything that was going into it. And it's just, unfortunately, it's not going to happen. But they're the second worst offense in football, only to the New England Patriots, who are the worst.
Oh, God,
I guess the GOAT really did. They do miss the GOAT a little bit, huh, John? Maybe?
Oh, yeah. Now the Jets have benched Zach Wilson, who, like you say, is the second worst quarterback in football. He falls down going onto the field, and, it could happen to anybody, but the guy is just not carrying himself with any swagger. And every time he goes out there, the team must just kind of go, oh, God.
Yeah. They've literally gone to quarterback 2, quarterback 3, quarterback 4. They're bringing, the Vikings are kind of doing the same thing. By the way, when you're talking about that stuff with Aaron Rodgers and IR and everything, Justin Jefferson, same position. At any point that he says he is ready, they could put him in. And he did not go in the last couple of weeks because he's so close. But I think the Vikings misjudged the Bears a little bit, John. And had they had JJ, that may have been a game changer actually for that game. I would expect if you're the best receiver in all of football, which a lot of people view him to be, he would have been a difference maker, I think, in that game. All right, next, we got a game tonight, John. Seattle going to Dallas. So here's the question I have. It's less about the teams and more about Dak Prescott. I was listening to guys on ESPN today, and they were talking about Dak Prescott, right? And they were talking about potentially, is he the MVP? Well, he's got the numbers, John. So you would say, well, yeah, he's certainly got a shot at being the MVP. He's got 23 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Those are good numbers. Here's the part that people have left out, and I'm not leaving it out because I fancy myself a bit of a GM, even if I'm not there right now. So here's what I've got for you. They played the 49ers. Do you know how they did in that game, John? They got beat 42-10.
Yeah, they got crushed.
It wasn't even close. It was never close. But they bounced back. They beat a really awful Chargers and Rams pair of teams. Then they lose when they go up against a good team again, the Eagles. And then they get on this roll. They beat the Giants. Are they very good? The Panthers, are they pretty good? Washington, we're talking about 3 teams that potentially could get their coaches fired. And I include the Giants in that because it's not for long is what the NFL stands for. And I'll tell you what, they will not be very patient, I don't think, with some of these young coaches. We already saw it happen in Carolina. 12 games in or whatever it was, he's out, right? So I would say this. My MVP right now, if it's not Dak Prescott, which it's not, my MVP right now, how about CJ Stroud? I know that sounds crazy, right?
No, it doesn't. It sounds correct.
This is a team, John, that was 3-13-1 last year, right? They stunk it up. They did a great job. They hired the right guy to be their head coach. They drafted every one of those draft picks has been on the field and playing and contributing to this team, including the quarterback who, let's see, did I even write down his numbers? His numbers are off the charts, but I can't remember exactly what they are, but they've won 6 games. So they've won twice as many games this year, John, as they did last year, and they still got some games to play. So I'm going to go with CJ Stroud. I know that's a long shot, but take a look at what they've done in 1 year, what he's done with that team. I think you could make a much better case for that guy down there in Texas than the other guy over in Dallas.
Yep. Well, and there's a reason, Pete, that Mr. Tepper is using explicatives whenever he comes into the locker room because it's all on him. That could have been his quarterback. That Reich wanted him, and if he had him, I guarantee he wouldn't have been fired yet, Pete.
No.
Not in his first year as head coach there. I'd say tonight, watch Micah Parsons. I'm not the hugest Skip Bayless fan, but I am going to say he's right about Micah. That guy is a game changer. He's got 11.5 sacks, Pete. He's got 13 tackles for a loss. And the guy is almost unstoppable. And in some games, he is unstoppable, depending how good the offensive line is. Eagles' offensive line, best. But as far as Micah, he is one of those game changers on defense. And then they've got Darren Bland, who's only picked off 7 passes leading the NFL and a bunch of tackles too. That kid makes tackles. So I'm excited for the game tonight, Pete. I will be surprised. Everybody is saying how bad Seattle got beat up by San Francisco, and that could be, but the score doesn't reflect the dominance that people think. 30-13, they could have got right back in it, Pete, but Geno Smith is kind of showing the same sort of things as your quarterback Dobbs. And that is, well, there's a reason he's been hanging around, but not exactly leading teams into the playoffs. So I am anxious to see the game, though, because I think Seattle's always exciting with Pete Carroll there. And with the right things going on and CeeDee Lamb, Pete, CD Lamb, I think you could have another great game out of Dak Prescott. As long as he finds him and their tight end Ferguson and things, they could walk all over Seattle, who's probably pretty beat up.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. And it will help Dak for the people that are out there wondering about the stats and everything else. I'll tell you what, you want stats, 19 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. That's what CJ Stroud has done. And this is his first year. Let's just think about how well that guy's playing in his first year, John, with a bunch of other rookies on the offensive line and at receiver and at running back, and they are just doing everything right. So it's fun to at least watch that team become what they are already. And maybe there's a lot more into the future. So we'll see. But yeah, Dak's got to beat somebody who's got a winning record one of these days, John, before it's impressive. And it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, well, they're playing in a division, Pete, where, it's Philly and nobody else. Right, nobody else shows up in that division except Dallas. But all right. Thank you for joining us, folks. This is the final Rebels Edge of the week. As you know, we broadcast 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We encourage you to check out marketrebellion.com/get started if you're somebody who wants to learn more about options, because we've got beginning, intermediate, and advanced courses there that you could sign up for and become a trader like Pete. or you can say, I want to travel a lot like John, and that's a mistake. That's a mistake. Don't do that. But anyway, we appreciate all of you joining us, all the folks at the street, and all the people that carry this show. So thank you. We'll see you Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time.